first organized practice I ever had. And my coach at that time, his name was Mr. Roof. We went through just 2 hours, to me, grueling. I could barely even walk, less run. I stood out like a sore thumb. The other players were kind of laughing at me, and I went home that night, and I pretty much thought that, I don't know, I don't think this is cut out for me. But I got up the next day, and I wanted some more of it. That practice there, I think, has stuck with me more than anything, and that coach as well, because the next day when I showed up, he said, I didn't think you'd come back, but he said, you know what, that tells me that you're going to be very good at this sport. And lo and behold, I was.
And you are in Australia right now.
You're talking NBA basketball. You're talking great teams. You're talking great individual players.
Takes it off, and there's number 23, and of course Johnny goes nuts.
We're all getting goosebumps thinking about it now.
I just tried to go out there and play my game.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Adam. I don't like anybody. I'm not a people person.
Strand, you made the pass, yes. Christian, can you catch the ball? Yes.
All the stars were aligned and all the muscles fired at the right time, and I was able to get off the ground and throw one down.
I was saving that as a surprise for you.
And now, introducing your host for In All Airness, Adam Ryan.
Welcome to episode 41. Thanks for joining me. My website, inallairness.com. Just add a / and the episode number to view show notes. In this episode, I'm honoured to chat with NBA Sixth Man of the Year, Illinois great, TV analyst and author, Eddie Johnson. The timing of this episode is perfect. Eddie was recently honoured in a halftime ceremony at Illinois, which commemorated the 35th anniversary of a game-winning jumper that he made against Magic Johnson and the Michigan State Spartans. We learn about Eddie's early sporting career and how he first became involved with basketball. He chats fondly about his playing days at Westinghouse High School, where he first appeared on the national radar. We discuss his great college career, where he was a 4-year star at the University of Illinois, playing for the Fighting Illini. Eddie talks about his return to Illinois just last week, as mentioned earlier. We also touch on his collegiate link to future NBA star Derek Harper. We cover Eddie's memories of the 1981 NBA draft day and the motivating factors that ensured his place within NBA history. Eddie chats candidly about his professional career, where he was a scoring machine with the Kansas City Kings, who later became the Sacramento Kings after the 1985 season. We chat about his 3 full seasons in Phoenix playing for the Suns, where he won the 1989 NBA Sixth Man of the Year award. We talk about his trade to the Seattle SuperSonics, his 1 season in Charlotte, and his decision to play overseas in Greece in 1994 and 1995. Eddie talks about his return to the NBA for the 96 season, where he signed as a free agent addition with the Indiana Pacers before ultimately signing with the Houston Rockets in early March of 1997. We talk about Eddie's vital role on that Houston Rockets roster that was loaded with future Hall of Famers. I was also compelled to ask him about his incredible buzzer-beating, game-winning, 3-point shot in the 1997 Western Conference Finals too. We round out this great conversation chatting about his post-NBA career. Now, Eddie's been a TV analyst for well over 10 years and recently found time to also publish a book with a fantastic title that he eloquently explains in the interview. We even find time to chat about a guy named Michael Jordan, plus plenty more topics. Now, onto the show. My guest today played 17 seasons in the NBA and was named the Sixth Man of the Year in 1989. He's currently an analyst with the Phoenix Suns TV network and has a recently released book with a fantastic title that we'll get to later in the conversation. Eddie Johnson, thanks for joining me.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate the time you've afforded me today. Just before we get into your college career, which was storied in itself, do you mind just quickly talking a little bit about your early years and how you found the game of basketball and really became involved with the game itself?
I was born in the city of Chicago, inner city. Grew up in Cabrini Green, which is not your greatest of areas, but it was great for me. Had a lot of friends, and I guess I was introduced to basketball just really on the concrete courts, just going out there watching the older kids play, enjoying what I saw, but also enjoyed other sports. I mean, I enjoyed playing baseball. I enjoyed playing football. I enjoyed hockey. It just wasn't something that just jumped at me immediately because I played them all. I would probably say I fell in love with basketball probably when I got to the 8th grade, after I had one of the hardest practices I've ever had in my life in trying out for a team. And I wanted to come back and experience it some more the next day. Most kids quit, but I came back and I didn't stop. I haven't stopped since. I mean, that's when I fell in love with it, and it's been a part of my life since then.
That practice that you're talking about that was the toughest of your life, do you mind just talking a little bit about that for a moment, please?
Well, it was first organized practice I ever had. And my coach at that time, his name was Mr. Roof. We went through just 2 hours, to me, grueling. And at the end, he said, get on the line. I came to understand that statement as being sprints. Up until that time, I didn't. I could barely even walk, less run. I stood out like a sore thumb. The other players were kind of laughing at me. And I went home that night, and I pretty much thought that, I don't know. I don't think this is cut out for me. But I got up the next day, and I wanted some more of it. That practice there, I think, has stuck with me more than anything. And that coach as well, because the next day when I showed up, he said, I didn't think you'd come back, but he said, you know what, that tells me that you're going to be very good at this sport. And lo and behold, I was.
Yeah, that's a really interesting story, and also a very good tipping point early in your sporting career, really, because what it then led to as far as your NBA career and what you're doing even these days, it obviously was a big decision for you to go back, and it certainly paid off and then some.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, that's what I tell young people to do now, is that, if it's too difficult for you, then that means you got to find a way to defeat it. Yep. You don't give in to it. I truly have that as a part of my life, where I consider myself an ant. An ant doesn't matter. I mean, you can stop them from coming at something, boy, but they're going to keep coming. If you stop them from coming one way, they're going to come another way. They'll die trying. They'll keep going. And that's how I consider myself. Whatever I want to do, I attack it that way. And I'm relentless in pursuing it and making sure that I accomplish it. And basketball was that way.
Excellent. Just before we get into your college career, do you mind us talking a little bit about your high school days as well and how you progressed as a high school player?
Well, that's where I made my name. Attended Westinghouse High School in Chicago, Illinois. And the reason I went there really because I didn't like swimming, and they didn't have a swimming pool. So it was kind of weird why I decided to attend Westinghouse High School. But once I got there, I was glad I did, because I had a great support staff around me. I had tremendous coaches that cared. I had great teachers. I just evolved into a tremendous basketball player. My freshman year, barely made the team. And then by the end of my freshman year, I was playing on varsity. That's how fast I grew in the sport and got better. And then by my sophomore year, I was considered all-city. And then my junior and senior years, I was all-state. And my senior year, I was MVP. I was the best player in the city of Chicago. So the key, I think, for me, and I tell people all the time, is what kept me focused was, again, I had great coaches, and they put us in an environment where we could succeed and not fail. And so for 4 years of my high school career, I rarely saw daylight during the school season. We were in practice at 7 o'clock in the morning, which meant it was still dark when I got up to go to school. And then after school, we would practice to 6:30, 7 o'clock. That means it was dark when I got out. And it just kept me away from situations and peer pressure that could jump up on me if I didn't have that time already taken care of.
Yeah, plenty of determination there, so that's great to hear too. Now, you continued the Chicago theme and you played 4 seasons with the Illinois Fighting Illini. And as of the time we're recording this chat, you're still 7th all-time in scoring and 5th in rebounds. In your junior and senior seasons, you started every game, and then you finished your career with averages of 14 points and 7 rebounds, along with 2 assists per game as well. In a moment, I'd like to talk about your famous role in a pre-NBA battle against Magic Johnson, and also your link to another future star, Derek Harper. But before that, do you mind just talking about your college career in general, please, Eddie?
Yeah, I had a choice to go to any school I wanted to coming out of high school. And that's the position I wanted to put myself in. I knew my mom would not be able to pay for my college education. And so I knew I had to go get a free one. Lo and behold, I had a chance to go to any school I wanted to. And I chose University of Illinois because, it was away from home, but it was close enough to home where my family can come see me play. Mm-hmm. And I also loved Lou Henson, who was the head coach of the University of Illinois. I just thought that he could really work on my game and make me a better player. And that's what he did. I mean, the first year I was there, didn't play much as a freshman and learned a solid lesson. Went home that summer, got stronger. Came back, 25 pounds added onto my frame, and I took off because I had the confidence to go anywhere on the court that I wanted to because of my strength. And sophomore year had a very good year. My junior year I came back. We played very well. Went to the the NIT. Final four, we lost to Minnesota, but we did finish in third. And then my final year, we went to the NCAA. We beat Wyoming, and then we lost to Kansas State. And when I left, I was the all-time leading scorer and rebounder for the University of Illinois, which was amazing to me because, as I said, I didn't play much as a freshman. But my goal was those last 3 years to be as good as I could. And coincidentally, I just got back from Champaign this past weekend because 35 years ago, my sophomore year, we went 15-0, and we were on a tremendous roll. We were ranked number 5 in the country, and we had opened up the Big Ten season by going to Indiana, which is a tough place to play and win, beat them there, followed that up with a win at Northwestern, and then came home, and we were facing Michigan State. Magic Johnson, Greg Kelser, Jay Vincent, and they were number 1 in the country, and rightly so. And that was our chance. I mean, that put Illinois on the map. We'd never been in that position as a university. It was a sold-out crowd, matter of fact, standing room only. Governor attended, national TV, all the things that you would want as a college athlete. And we played them nip and tuck to the end of the ball game. And at the end, we had the ball with about 7 seconds to go. And, I seized that opportunity to be great. And I got an opportunity to score, and I hit the game-winning bucket, which propelled us to the top of the map. And 35 years ago this past weekend, they celebrated that. So I just got back from Illinois and was introduced to the crowd, spoke at a luncheon, had a book signing, all those things that really makes a weekend great. So that was my college career, and I was fortunate, and then got drafted to the NBA.
Yeah, some fantastic memories and very fortuitous timing that just over the weekend that you were honoured again with the 35th anniversary of that incredible finish to the game. And I've seen the YouTube clip of it as I was doing the research for this chat today, and the crowd reaction is just wonderful. The players are all celebrating. Just some incredible moments there. Do you often relive that game? Have you watched it at all recently?
Well, I watched it a lot this weekend. They kept showing it all the time. But yeah, I'll go back and watch it. I mean, I'm not too fond of how old the tape is, But yeah, I watch it, but I can see it in my mind. I mean, I know that whole scenario. I know how it's set up. The play was just designed for our guard to penetrate, and I made sure that guard penetrated to my side of the floor. That was my intention, that I wanted the last shot, and that guard knew that I wanted it. And when I got it, it was just no thought process at all. I just went up and knocked it down.
Fantastic memories. And yeah, as you said, Michigan State were ranked number 1 at the time, led by Magic Johnson, of course, and also they'd be the eventual NCAA champions just a few months later as well. So just some incredible moments there, and I'm sure a huge part of what set you well on the path to achieving so much in the NBA as well. So that's fantastic. And you did mention the NBA draft, and we'll get to that in just a moment, but your senior season at Illinois was Derek Harper's freshman season. Do you mind just talking a little bit about the relationship that you have with Derek in college, and how did that develop or progress into the pros?
Well, Derek was probably one of the first All-Americans to come to Illinois out of state. That was huge. I think he was a first-team All-American at that. He's one of the most highly sought-after guards in the country, and he chose to come all the way from Florida to Champaign, Urbana, which was unheard of at the time. And so he was a tremendous addition to our team. That's what we needed. We needed a solid ball handler. We needed a leader. We needed someone that would just take the reins, because, quite frankly, our sophomore year, when we went 15-0, right after we beat Michigan State, our point guard got hurt, and we lost 11 out of our last 15 games and didn't even make the tournament. So I knew for sure that was a huge addition for us, and not just with Derek, but we also got another good guard in Craig Tucker to go along with Perry Range and Quinn Richardson, who we already had. So we had a great nucleus of guards, and I thought that made us a very good team. And Derek was the one at the focal point. He started as a freshman, played a lot of minutes, right away showed defensively that he could guard anybody and hold his own. And it just culminated into the pros. So we're very good friends. We visited, matter of fact, a couple of weeks ago. So we have a lot of memories when it comes to Illinois.
Yeah, great to hear. Now, due to prior dealings involving the Atlanta Hawks and the Utah Jazz, the Kansas City Kings were able to pick you up in the 1981 NBA draft. You were 29th pick overall. It was held in New York. do you have any draft day memories of note, or where were you at the time when the draft was conducted?
I was in Chicago, my hometown, and I had just left work. Matter of fact, I just took a lunch break from work and came down to the Chicago Bulls headquarters for the draft. Felt that I should have been a first-round pick, but knew going into the draft that might not happen unless it was at the end of the first round. So I wasn't too excited about, having a bunch of family and everybody around to enjoy the draft. And so I just really non-discreetly, with my mom, came down to the draft. My mom and my girlfriend, I think at the time, came down to the draft. And as the team started selecting, I knew that the bottom of the order in the first round would not be great for me if I got drafted by those teams, because I knew I wouldn't have a chance to play. And so I kind of started to frown if I had gotten chosen by Boston or the Lakers or what have you, because, I just wanted a chance to play, and I knew those teams were really stocked on their roster, and it would have been tough for a second-round pick to make their team. So as it got into the second round, I became excited because I knew now the order reversed again, and I would have an opportunity to play because I would go to an up-and-coming team. And the Kansas City Kings selected me with the 6th pick in the second round, I believe, and it was a great situation for me. They had just lost 2 free agents in Scott Wetman and Otis Birdsong, and so I knew there was some openings there. I knew they needed offense, and Cotton Fitzsimmons was the coach. He gave me an opportunity my first year, and I played, not a ton, but he gave me a great chance to play.
Yeah, you played some great seasons there in Kansas City. And from your 1981 draft class, only Buck Williams, who was at pick number 3, played more games than you. And also just Tom Chambers, who was pick number 8, scored more points than you. So you obviously had a wonderful career, and your draft position didn't necessarily determine how your career would play out. So that's fantastic in itself. Just tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but did you use that eventual draft position as motivation throughout your long career?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I definitely wanted to show teams that they made a mistake, and I think I did. And a lot of teams admitted they did. That's just the luck of the draw. But I also think me getting drafted like I did, I thought it humbled me. It got me focused, and it made me appreciate the fact that, you don't always get what you want, but you can go take it. And that's what I did. I just wanted to go prove to people that I was one of the best players in that draft class, that I should have gone in the top 5 picks. That's fine. I mean, I think a lot of general managers would admit it. They would admit that they would have taken me higher if it was the case.
Yeah, certainly. Now, you played your first 6 seasons with the Kings, who became the Sacramento Kings following the 85 season. You led the team in scoring 3 times. It was only mere percentage points away from being 4 times. And your first playoffs were in 1984 against the eventual Western Conference champs, the LA Lakers. And again, you'd meet up with Magic Johnson. Now, in 1986, you ran into the then would-be NBA finalists, the Houston Rockets. So how were those first 2 playoff experiences, Eddie? I'm young. I'm in my young 20s, thinking I'll always get to the playoffs because we started to really gel as a team. So we knew our work was cut out. I mean, we were playing, arguably the best team in the league at that time. It was always the Lakers and the Celtics. But, we wanted a chance to maybe try to shock the world, but we were just undermanned. I mean, they just pretty much had a warm-up with us, beat us 3-0, I think, swept us. And, I had some good games in that series. We took it as a learning experience, no doubt about it. The fact that the year before we came up short getting into the playoffs, and then the next year we did. So we were excited about that process. Yeah, sure. And you did mention in one of your previous answers the great Cotton Fitzsimmons. Do you mind just quickly talking a little bit about his influence on you as your NBA career developed? Yeah, he was probably, he was the best pro coach I ever had. He guided me. He was a father figure, not just as coaching, but just off the court. He really taught me a lot, helped me mature and grow as a man and as a basketball player. And when he passed away, I mean, I lost somebody very deeply to me. I really did. To this day, it's been very difficult. Cotton is still held in very high regard, obviously, by a lot of NBA players and coaches and obviously related personalities. So he obviously made a big impression on many people's lives. Now, where possible, I like to ask my guests about their experiences playing against or with Michael Jordan. I note that your first regular season NBA game, according to basketballreference.com, was in late October of 1984. It was obviously Jordan's rookie season. He scored 25 points and you scored 24 points. Of course, MJ was a highly touted rookie. Do you remember your first on-court meeting, and what memories do you have just from playing against Michael Jordan in general?
Yeah, I do. It was in Kansas City, and I encountered Jordan even that summer because I played against him, and the Olympic team was traveling, and they had a number of NBA players playing against them in different locations, so I really got to see his talents. And then when he came to Kansas City, I mean, we rarely would sell out, and the place was almost sold out because of him. You know, he's just a tremendous talent, man. I mean, it's just a talent that we're not going to be fortunate enough to see in the way that he did it. Obviously, we're seeing it with LeBron and Kevin Durant, who I think are special talents as well. But you can see right away that, you know, that Jordan was going to be a big-time scorer because he did it with ease. And I always try to live up to the challenge of any great player coming into a game that I wanted to show them that I had some stuff, too. I've definitely had some success against, you know, Jordan-led Bulls teams over my career, not to the level that I would have liked because they won 6 championships. I didn't win any, but I have had some good individual games playing against them.
Yes, certainly. Now, you did mention that NBA versus the USA team in the preparation of the 1984 Olympics there. How many of those exhibition games did you play in? Because I know they did, as you mentioned, they toured around.
And I can't totally remember, but I know I played in one. Could have been 2, but it was a good experience.
Excellent. In 1989, when you were playing for the Phoenix Suns, you won the NBA's Sixth Man of the Year award, and you had an incredible 21.5 points a game, almost 4.5 rebounds. You shot 50% from the field and also over 40% from the three-point line for good measure. And to top that all off, you had almost 90% from the free throw line. So some incredible stats there. Do you mind just talking about that standout season, and where do you rank that in terms of your all-time favorite NBA seasons?
It was a great year because the year before we only had won 28 games. And then, you know, we made some deals during the course of the season. We brought over from Cleveland Kevin Johnson, Mark West, Ty Corbin, and we traded a very popular player in Larry Nance. And then we gave up Mike Sanders. Then we traded James Edwards. We traded Jay Humphreys. I mean, really redid that team on the fly. Really, it was during the course of the season. A lot of those players were traded, by the way, before a basketball game in uniform. So it was kind of drastic. But when Kevin Johnson came over and we saw him play, we knew that he was going to be special. And in addition to Mark West and Ty Corbin, 2 defensive players that just played the game unselfishly, we knew they would help our team. And so in the off season, they had a great draft. They drafted Dan Marley, Tim Perry, and Andrew Lang. And so it gave us size and Lang, defensive quickness and athleticism in Tim Perry, and then all-around play in Dan Marley. And then we go to Seattle and we signed Tom Chambers as a free agent. So in one swoop, we really redid our team. We had an East Coast trip early in the year, and I think we beat Boston in Boston Garden. And I thought that really signified that we were on our way. And we went on to win 55 games. And, you know, Tom Chambers led us in scoring. And Kevin Johnson and I both averaged over 20. I averaged 21 in 27 minutes of play. And the reason I was able to do it is because when I stepped on the floor, I had the ultra green light to let it go. And had a tremendous year, shot almost 50% from the field, over 43 from 3, I think, and got Sixth Man of the Year.
I read out your stats just a moment ago. They're incredible numbers right across the board, really. And you mentioned so many great players there, so it's hard to really narrow down and focus on any in particular. But you talked very fondly of KJ there. How soon did you know, once you started playing with Kevin Johnson, how great a player he was or was going to be and develop into?
I think immediately when we got him, we saw his feistiness. We saw he was a very dedicated individual on and off the court. And he had great leadership ability and almost impossible to stop when he made up his mind to get to the rim. And if you did stop him, he knew how to find people. So that's the kind of person you want to play with. We knew that he would be special, and special he was.
Now, I've watched numerous old NBA games on videotapes and DVDs, and I love 1980s and 1990s NBA, particularly some of the arenas that were back in the day. You played at Memorial Coliseum in Phoenix, and it looked like a really wonderful arena to play in terms of the crowd interaction. How do you compare the arenas of your era to some of the more expansive arenas of today?
I mean, they're all relevant. I mean, I think it's really all who you put in the stands. Because from a basketball player's perspective, that's all we care about, is the support and the people in the stands. Now, from a fan's perspective, they're going to be into the amenities of the arena and what's there and the comfortability. But from a player standpoint, we're playing on that hardwood. It didn't matter. It didn't matter where I played. I could play outside. If I knew there was a bunch of people out there watching, that's all I needed. It's all the same. You just wanted to be on a team that gave you support. And when we started to win in Phoenix, we got support. When I went to Sacramento, we got tremendous support. We sold out every game, and that's what you want to play in front of.
Understandable. Now, early into the 1991 season, the Suns traded you to the SuperSonics in exchange for Xavier McDaniel. Can you please just talk about your career in Seattle and also the 1993 Western Conference Finals where you matched up against your former team, the Phoenix Suns?
Yeah, I mean, look, when I got traded from the Suns, I wasn't happy. I was leaving a 55-win team and a lot of friends, a place that I was calling home and still home today. I live here. And so it was difficult, but I thought the timing was right. There comes a point in everybody's career or everybody's relationship where they need to separate. And although Cotton continued to be a father figure to me, I think he and I knew that we had just spent too much time together. And they looked to get better by bringing some physicality to their team. And Seattle was just looking to really change their team, just change the environment. And I don't know if they knew what they were getting in me. But when I got there, I had a lot of success. I mean, we made the playoffs our first year after really having a terrible start. When I got there, and we took Portland, who was the number 1 seed in the NBA that year, to a 5-game series and almost beat them. And I averaged like 25 points in the series. So the Seattle team was probably the most talented team I've ever played on. I mean, when I say talent, I mean from top to bottom. I mean, it was ridiculous. And the only thing that was hurting us was just immaturity. No, we had tremendous leadership. It was just immaturity to just not a lot of playoff experience, because we had experience, but just not a lot of playoff experience for our young guys. And, Gary Payton, Sean Kemp, Derek McKee, Dana Barros were tremendous young players. And as you see, Gary Payton just made the Hall of Fame. So then myself, Ricky Pierce, Michael Cage, Sam Perkins, Nate McMillan, we had a tremendous team. Top to bottom, the most talented team I've ever played on.
You mentioned some great names there as well, and Ricky Pierce, one of my favourite players back in that era as well, and fortunate to speak with him as a guest on the podcast a month or two ago, so that was a thrill too, chatting about his career as well. Now, in that 1993 Western Conference Finals, you met up against your former team, the Suns. Do you mind briefly just touching on how that experience was, and did you have sort of mixed emotions, or you were just completely bent on trying to get the win?
No, I wanted it, no doubt about it. I mean, you always want the best, and that particular year they had the best record, and so we wanted them, no doubt about it. And they're lucky to even get there because the Lakers had them down 2-0 in the first round at home. They beat them the first 2 games at home, and the Lakers just couldn't withstand it. But they had to travel a tough road to get to us as well as we did. We had to beat a great Houston team in order to get there. The Suns had to go through a track. We did. Like I said, we beat Houston in a tough 7-game series. We got to the Suns and, we felt that we could beat them. We felt we were more talented, although they had Charles Barkley and he had just finished a tremendous career. I'm disappointed that we didn't beat them. And it went to a 7-game series. We beat them once on their floor to go back 1-1. And I didn't play well in game 3. They were able to steal that game. We won game 4. And then it went back and forth until game 7, and we had a tremendous opportunity to do something. And we just couldn't get it done. Charles just played one of the best games of his career, and I had probably my best game of the playoffs, but it just wasn't enough.
You took it very close to winning that 7th game, but unfortunately just couldn't quite get over the hill there. And prior to the 1994 NBA season, the Sonics traded you to the Charlotte Hornets, where you played 1 season. Following that, you spent a year overseas playing in Europe. How was that experience?
I enjoyed it. I really did. I mean, the Hornets was just a stopgap for me. It didn't really pan out like I would have liked it to as a basketball player, although it was a very talented team that I played on. But then after that season, And the salary cap had a lot to do with it. And I'm glad it did in a way, because it gave me a chance to make a decision to go somewhere that I probably wouldn't have never thought about going at that point in time in my career. My agent told me there was some teams interested in me coming over to Europe. I just said, okay, I'd fly to Greece and see what they had to offer. And I got there and I accepted what they had. I mean, I loved the presentation. I loved the fact of traveling around Europe playing basketball. You know, they made me an offer I couldn't refuse too. So a lot of good things came out of it. And lo and behold, I thought I had the best year of my life playing basketball. It made basketball fun again for me. And I think that allowed me to, come back to the NBA after and be rejuvenated.
That's important too, which is a good point. Now, before the 1996 NBA season commenced, you signed as a free agent with the Indiana Pacers, and you played about 90 games with Indiana. And then prior to the 1997 trade deadline, you were sent to the Denver Nuggets, and then within a fortnight, you had signed with the Houston Rockets. Do you mind just talking a little bit about that period of your career, Eddie?
Yeah, I mean, the Indiana signing, I was very excited about the possibility of coming to Indiana because they had a talented team. I mean, Reggie Miller, Rick Smits, Dale Davis, Antonio Davis, and they signed Ricky Pierce and I together. Derek McKee was on that team, so it was Mark Jackson. So it was a very talented basketball team, and I was really looking forward to it. Larry Brown and I just didn't mix. We just didn't mix for some reason. He was very influential in wanting me there. But, Larry Brown's a hard-nosed coach. He's set in his ways in a lot of different areas. And, we just didn't mix. He was trying to make me into something that I wasn't. He wanted me to be more of a defender and all of that, which, I've always taken pride in just being responsible to detail and competing on that end. But I knew that I was a scorer. And I knew that he wasn't utilizing me like I should. So it just wasn't good. That was a period of my career that I wish I had back, because I know for sure that I would have scored over 20,000 points. I know for sure that maybe, I would have probably had more success. But it just didn't happen. And I had knee surgery while I was there as well. So it was just it was a dark period, probably my darkest period as an individual, not as a teammate, because I enjoyed those guys, but as an individual playing ball, it was probably one of my darkest periods because I started to wane on whether I was loving basketball, as much as I should. And so I was glad to move on, and I moved on to the Houston Rockets, and they gave me a dose of excitement and an opportunity to prove my worth. And lo and behold, I got that chance, and I succeeded, I felt.
Definitely did, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But before that, thank you very much for just being so open and honest. It's really great just to hear a player's thought process, particularly looking back over their career. So I really appreciate you sharing that. So thank you again. Now, your role in Houston's 1997 playoffs run was critical. Most notably, you had an simply amazing buzzer beater in Game 4 of the Western Conference Finals. Now, do you mind just talking quickly about your time in Houston and particularly that incredible finish and also that wonderful reaction as well, which I'm sure was just pure joy in Game 4 where you hit that incredible buzzer beater?
Yeah, I decided to go to the Rockets. I had a chance to go to a number of teams, but the Rockets were a team that I thought that I could fit in right away. And with Charles Barkley, Hakeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler, Mario Elie on that team, I felt that, and Kevin Willis, I felt that I could play a major role. And so they gave me that opportunity. I was successful. We got deep into the playoffs and we got to Utah to go to the championship. And they had us down 2-0. They beat us pretty handily in Utah. Our bench didn't play well, and I was the leader off of the bench, so I had to take a lot of the heat for it. And I just made up my mind in Game 3 that despite every question mark and all the things that were going around, the inability of our bench to compete against theirs, that I had to make a difference. And I came out in Game 3, I had 31 points, and we won Game 3. And then Game 4 came, it was a nip and tuck game all the way down to the wire. We got the ball at the end, called a timeout, and I was looking at Rudy like, you going to check me in? He did. He designed a play, and I knew when he designed that play, I knew that I might have a chance. Me understanding offenses and just being around it, I knew I might have a chance. The play was designed to go into Hakeem Olajuwon. Well, I knew they weren't going to allow that to happen. So what they did was they did something different. Jeff Hornacek, who was guarding me, he left me after I inbounded the ball and I ran to the top of the key. He left me and he ran over and he kind of double-teamed Clyde Drexler. Well, Clyde had no avenue but to pass the ball back out to Matt Maloney, and so that's what they wanted. But unfortunately for them, I got far enough behind the three to know that Jeff was going to have a hard time getting back to me. And I knew it would be a tough shot, but I just wanted to make sure I had a good angle to get the ball from Matt Maloney, and then two, just have a good shot at the rim. And when Matt got it, I just readied my feet. I knew it was coming to me. I just readied my feet, man. I did all the things that I've been taught, in terms of spot-up shooting. You point your inside foot to the rim, your outside foot toward the passer, you catch it, you turn in, you shoot it. And I had my knees flexed. I had everything right. And when he passed it to me, that's all I needed to do was execute it. And I felt I executed to its fullest. And when it left my hand, I felt good about it. And when it got halfway there, I knew it was good. I just knew. It just looked too good not to go. And so it didn't even hit the rim. And after that, everything's a blur. When I watch the video, I see myself running and all that stuff. I didn't remember any of that stuff. But until I watched the video. But what a great moment and opportunity for me. Unfortunately, after that, they go back to Utah. They win. They come back to our place. We had a chance to win the game, very close. And John Stockton did to us what I did to them in Game 4. He hit a game-winning shot to send them to the finals. So it was a bittersweet series for me, no doubt about it.
Yeah, you had some real highs, obviously like that particular shot in Game 4, but then to then be on the receiving end and watch Stockton hit a shot similar to then send the Jazz to the finals and then send your team home, I guess that's a fair contrast. But yeah, the exuberance that you showed, and it was such a quick catch and release as well. You talked about how you just did everything right and lined up, but it was such a quick release and just everything worked perfectly. And it's one of the greatest moments in NBA playoff history for sure. Where would you rate that in terms of an individual moment for yourself over your whole career? Is that right near the top? Would have to be, I guess.
Oh, it's up there. It's no doubt about it. It's up there. The shot was exciting and it was like it was in the moment and the reactions and all that was tremendous. I wouldn't trade that for anything. But we wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for Hakeem Olajuwon having the game that he had to put us in that position. And so in saying that, I would, when I think about that series, I think Game 3. Game 3 to me was the most important game, and I was able to get 31. I think, a lot of people don't look at that game, but that was the game because if they go up 3-0, no way we're coming back in that series.
True.
So I knew Game 3 that something really had to happen, and I felt my 31 points off the bench in that game was more important than me hitting the game winner, because even if I missed that game winner in Game 4, we still could have won that game because it was an overtime game if I had missed. I look at Game 3 as really the focal point. It stands high up there.
Sure, and that turned around the series, obviously keeping it alive for sure in Game 3. Now, you did mention one of the greatest players of all time, obviously Hall of Famer Hakeem Olajuwon. Being around him doing practices and travelling on the road and just being around that core at that time, how great of a player was Hakeem, and where would you rate him all time in terms of centres or just overall his impact on the game, really?
One of the greatest centers ever to play, no doubt about it. Because he did it on both ends. He not only scored, but he defended. He blocked shots as well as anybody I've ever seen, and he kept it in play. Bill Russell would have been proud. But here's a guy that came over to this country and perfected the game and perfected it in his own way. Invented his own moves, which is unique. You don't, as a basketball player, it's a circle. You normally copy guys. It's a copycat league, and rightly so. Off the dribble, jump shot, post up. If you got a hook shot, that's Kareem. You don't reinvent the wheel in basketball. Hakeem did, because that dream shake move, nobody could do that. Nobody's ever been able to perfect it. And he had quick moves that I have not seen since then. So he has definitely put his imprint on the game of basketball, and then a quality person off the court. One of the best guys I've ever been around on a basketball team. He kept me humble. I really learned from watching him, and his leadership was quiet, but it was effective.
Great to hear a bit of a background on some of these all-time greats and how they were personally to deal with as well. So I'm pleased to hear that. Now, just before we get into your current job as an analyst for Suns TV, you did mention a name there I'd like to quickly touch on, Matt Maloney. I'm pretty sure he went undrafted, but He had two really important seasons with Houston, his first two seasons with the Rockets. Do you mind just quickly talking about his impact, and particularly I'm fairly sure as an undrafted player, and what he meant for that team at that time?
Well, it came to the right team. I mean, Matt Maloney was slow of foot. He wasn't going to burn you with speed, but he was heady. And like I said, he came to the right team. The Rockets really didn't need a point guard to do anything other than just get the ball up the court, throw it into either Hakeem Olajuwon, Charles, or Clyde Drexler, and then stand behind the three-point line. And that's what Matt did. And so it was a perfect team for him. I don't even know if he would have made the team of a lot of other teams if he had gotten drafted. So he knew it, and he played it to the best of his ability, and he had success. And it culminated into him getting a pretty good contract. Didn't play a lot of years in the league. Lack of athleticism at the point guard position finally caught up to him. But what a quality young man he was. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed being around him and playing with him. He remains a friend to this day.
That's great to hear. And I know that he had some really big shots that he hit as well during some of the key playoff games as well, where he was definitely on fire from three-point line at certain times. Now, we'll just quickly move on. You've been really generous with your time, and I appreciate that, but we'll move on to your time now. You're currently working with the Phoenix Suns as a TV analyst, and you've done so for almost, I think, 12 or more years. How was that transition from being a player and then becoming now an on-camera talent, and how did you adjust in those first few seasons?
Yeah, well, transition is the key word. I mean, that's what I've always believed in. You know, I believe that you always be ready to transition. You don't wait until it's upon you. I was doing radio shows and writing for newspapers probably after my 7th year in the league. I was very active in it. I was working on my next transitional job, so to speak. I wanted to make sure that I segued. I love to talk. I knew that, so I had to find something that I'd like to do. You know, I had choices. I mean, I could have gone the coaching route, the front office route, or just do TV. And the reason I chose TV is because I wanted to spend more time at home with my kids as they were growing up. And so I started doing WNBA games in my off seasons. And then when I was done, I had tapes for my resume. First year I did ASU basketball. And then the next year I was hired by the Phoenix Suns. And I've been there ever since. This is my 14th year. I enjoy what I do. I can call a game in my sleep. I've seen so many basketball games. Nothing can get past me. There's nothing that I can't talk about. And the best job in the world. I sit there at midcourt, I call a game, and I get paid for it. America is great. That's all I can say.
I love it. I love to hear that, and it's just open and honest. And yeah, you're obviously incredibly well spoken, and I've thoroughly enjoyed our chat to this point. Actually, speaking of when you're even transitioning after your 7th or 8th year, I have an old videotape where you're working alongside Kevin Calabro, the Seattle Sonics commentator. And yes. I'm pretty sure it was some sort of playoff special or something where you guys worked together, and you actually were interviewing Charles Barkley at one stage. I'm not sure if it was during the playoff run in maybe the early to mid 1990s. Do you recall that in particular, the time working with Calabro?
Where did you find that tape at?
Well, I've got a few connections that I have that are collectors of games from that era, so I do have a bit of a collection there.
Yeah, Kevin Calabro is a guy that's helped me in my career, just watching him and being around him. And yeah, that's what I was doing. I mean, I was doing a lot of that kind of work while I was playing. Because, I didn't want to be the person that knocks on a general manager's door after my career is over and asks for a favor. I wanted them to come because they knew I was qualified. And that's what I've always tried to do. I've always tried to put myself in a situation that I'm already qualified and they want me, not me wanting them. I try to educate young players on that scenario all the time.
That's great. Now, in mid-2013, Eddie, you released a book. It's got a fantastic title. It's called You Big Dummy, An Athlete's Simple Guide to a Successful Career. Now, I've only had a chance at this stage to read some of the excerpts online, but I really enjoyed it, particularly where you discuss why some of the retired players struggle to land key roles within some of the NBA organizations. How long were you actually working on the book for, and how has it been received thus far, if you don't mind my asking?
Well, it took me about 2 years. I just sat down one day and I just said, I'm tired of autobiographies. I'm tired of players retiring and the next step is they got to write a book. And I just look at the fact, if you're a great player, you don't need to write an autobiography. I already know your life. I've already followed you. And so what happens is the only way that the book sells is if they put dirt in the book. It's a turnoff for me. It really is. It's nothing that interests me. I don't read autobiographies from athletes. I only read books that I think that they're tailoring toward helping other people. And so when I sat down 2 years ago, I said, I want to write something that's going to help young players, that's going to help people in general become better individuals and have more focus, have more drive. And I'll tailor it around a lot of stories and analogies of my life, other people's lives, what they did, put them in situations, and go from there. And that's what I did. That's what I tried to do. Just 12 chapters of just simple statements, simple analogies that can help anybody that's interested in bettering themselves. And so I came up with the title, You Big Dummy, because I always referred to myself as that. When I did something indifferent or out of character, I would just look in the mirror and say, "You big dummy, why did you do that?" And I got that saying from Sanford and Son, which was a tremendous sitcom here in the United States. And Fred Sanford, a great comedian, that was his name in the show, but his real name was Red Fox. And he would always call his son, "You big dummy," on the show. And it wasn't a negative. It was a term of endearment, because every time his son would act up, he just called him, "You big dummy." And that's a way of humbling yourself and somebody. Listen, look, pay attention, be quiet, because you don't know it all. In this particular aspect, you are a big dummy. So now you want to get smart? Listen. And so that's what I wanted to do with the title, is to get people's attention. And then at the bottom, when they see what's below it, an athlete's simple guide to a successful career, then they'll get it. And that's what I did. And my first chapter in the book, to me, is my favorite, because it was all about me. It says, "Do you love the game?" And I just give a lot of stories and analogies on how to find out if you actually do love it. And I tell them how I fell in love with it, because I truly believe you're only going to succeed at anything unless you love it. If you don't love it, you're not going to succeed at it. It's going to make you unhappy. And eventually you're going to turn against it. And so that's what I started from. And it's over 200 some pages. I didn't want to make it very difficult. I didn't want to be clinical. I wanted it to be simple. I wanted a middle schooler all the way to a person with a PhD to pick this book up and understand it. That's how I wrote it. I wasn't trying to impress people with big words or be complicated. I wanted it to be simple. And that's what it's been. And it's done well. I encourage your listeners to go get it. It's at eddiejohnson8.com. It's a wonderful book to read.
Yeah, I'll definitely put the information about some of the things we've chatted about today into the show notes for the episode, so that'll certainly be in there as well. I'll link to that without doubt whatsoever. Now, just one quick last question for you, Eddie, before we wrap things up, and thanks again for your time. What's the best way for listeners to keep in touch with your movements online? I know you have a Twitter presence, and you have a really good follow on Twitter, so would that be the best way for people to follow your movements?
Yeah, a lot of ways they can. Like I said, Eddie Johnson 8, the numeral 8.com is one. Twitter at JumpShot8 is one. And then I have a fan page as well on Facebook, so they can go to facebook.com/YouBigDummy8. It's 8. So that's the 3 places they can always stay in touch with me and see what I'm doing.
I love it. Now, I will just add one more question if you don't mind. I really have a fascination with jersey numbers and things like that. I'm pretty sure you wore number 33 in college, and number 8 was your primary NBA number. I think you might have switched to number 22 for a season. What's the actual relevance of that number 8, if you don't mind my asking?
Well, when I came into the league, somebody already had 33. I think Steve Johnson, who was a higher draft pick than me, he was able to scoop up that number. That was fine. I didn't think I would probably wear 33 once I got in the league. I picked 8 because I love single-digit numbers. Dr. J obviously was a player that I looked at, and I kind of marveled at his single-digit number that he wore. Mm-hmm. Marcus Johnson, who played for Milwaukee Bucks, wore number 8. And I guess I gravitated to number 8 because I just thought it was significant. I don't know why. I just think it's the prettiest number. I just felt like that was me. And lo and behold, it's one of the most popular numbers, for skilled players in the league. I mean, you'll see a lot of guys, especially shooters, wear number 8. And so I've had a number of guys, since I've done TV, walk up to me and say, man, I wore they knew I wore number 8, and they say, yeah, I grabbed number 8, man, because that's a great number. So I was very proud of that.
Yeah, that's great. I love that sort of stuff. So I thought I'd just ask that as a final follow-up question there. But it's been a real thrill having a chance to chat with you today, Eddie, and I appreciate you fitting in time in between this busy NBA season to do so. So thanks again for that. And I wish you all the best and continued success in the future.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thanks again, Eddie. It was a treat chatting with you. I encourage you to interact with the show. You can suggest topics for future episodes or guests that you'd like to hear conversations with. I welcome your voicemail comments on my website or through my Facebook page. Since last episode, more great iTunes feedback has been received. Thanks to Boz87, I'm quite confident that's not your real name, and FooFan1, aka Simon, both have added glowing iTunes reviews to the Australian store. Boz says, "This podcast is unreal and an absolute must. I literally get tingles when Mike Fratello reveals how and why Marv Albert gave him the nickname the Tsar. Adam is hoops crazy, and his depth of research on his guests is astounding." Simon adds, "Adam takes me back to that younger version of myself obsessed with basketball. He has a great knowledge of the game and makes all his guests feel welcome, remembering things I did 20 years ago. Perhaps one day he may get the great man himself." Now, thanks to both of you guys for those great reviews. Honestly, they are fantastic to read. They're great to receive, I must be honest, and it just continues to add motivation to what I'm doing, and I just love doing this. I'd do it 24/7 if I didn't need to sleep, so that sort of just tells you how much of a passion I have for the game and obviously for doing this podcast, so thanks again for that. I do have some wonderful plans ahead for the podcast in 2014. Please stay tuned for those developments. Worldwide, the show currently has 29 reviews and 33 5-star ratings. I say it regularly, but I truly mean it. Thank you for your great support of my podcast. If you do add a review, iTunes or Stitcher, I'd love to mention your name in a future episode. Now, with today's guest, Eddie Johnson, in mind, it's appropriate that I add your ratings and reviews are like a Kevin Johnson no-look pass, the ultimate assist, helping me reach a wider podcast audience, and this in turn gives you, as the listener, more opportunity to hear these great conversations. You can subscribe to my show in various ways, inallairness.com/iTunes, or you can add it to your Stitcher playlist, inallairness.com/Stitcher. Now, I did recently update my Stitcher profile, however, that unfortunately reset all the show data, so if you do use Stitcher, I'd really appreciate your help to increase those numbers once more so the show can appear in more playlists. My RSS feed appears in the right-hand sidebar of my website, and you can subscribe to the show on Player FM and many other podcatchers. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show and share my web address with your friends and colleagues, inallairness.com. Check out the podcast archive for plenty more episodes with high-profile guests. Follow me on Twitter at inallairness. Please add your like to the show's social hub, facebook.com/inallairness. Join me next time for another edition of the show.